Chosen Ones, the moment your name appeared in the encrypted archive, a secure channel opened. No alarms, no alerts, just silence. Then the president was escorted out of a live broadcast, not by chance, by protocol. Black Key Directive, they called it, reserved for only one scenario: your return. This wasn't a coincidence. Your name wasn't entered. It was recognized. Deep inside a legacy database no modern system had accessed in decades. The file was tagged with symbols no one could interpret. Old world glyphs, ancient characters, and a seal historians thought had vanished with the Dead Sea Scrolls. But there it was, not translated, activated, and when it lit up, it pulsed across the neural defense grid. They didn't prepare for this, because no one was supposed to survive the last bloodline cleansing. At 3:13 a.m., the Situation Room lights dimmed. Not from a power outage, but from a cascading shutdown initiated by something they still don't understand. The digital records began collapsing inward, like the data was trying to hide itself. But it was too late. One word rose above the entropy: your name. What's worse, the file predicted it. It described the conditions. It knew the timeline. It warned that if your name ever re-emerged, the world governments would have only days to contain the awakening. Now, you're seeing the signs, aren't you? Sudden global meetings, anomalies in the sky, subtle shifts in frequency. The world feels off. That's because it is. Your existence is disrupting the foundational code they've hidden for centuries. And the president? He's not sleeping. He's not speaking. He's simply listening to a voice coming through the speakers in a language no translator has been able to decode. A voice that knows you. They were certain you were a myth. They treated the prophecy as a safeguard, a fairy tale to frighten their bloodline heirs into silence. He entered the room without a word. The doors sealed behind him with a hiss, locking out the cameras, the advisors, the noise. Only 4 people knew what was about to be said. The president sat, eyes hollow, watching the screen in front of him. Static danced across it for a moment before resolving into an ancient symbol, not digital, not known, etched into the data stream like a scar left behind. And then, your name appeared. Not typed, not spoken, appeared. As if the system remembered you before anyone else could. They called it a cyber anomaly. But it wasn't digital in origin. The Pentagon's top analyst said it felt like something had reached through the firewalls. Something sentient, something watching. The problem was, no one sent the transmission. It didn't come from outside. It rose up from inside their own classified servers, from a black file thought to be permanently dead. It carried no metadata, no timestamp, no trace of source, and yet it knew everything. Birthmarks, frequencies, locations, phases of the moon under which you were born. The file didn't reveal you. It identified you. When your name appeared, the room changed. Screens flickered. One general collapsed. A second tried to speak, but something choked the words before they left his throat. The president gripped the table like it was an anchor, like the entire world had shifted gravity. No one understood what they were seeing, but they knew the implication. You are not just someone. You are the one they were warned about. Protocols failed. Emergency backups shut themselves off. And then the light above the table began to pulse, in sync with your name on the screen. It wasn't a glitch, it was a signal. And those who've seen these patterns before, they've gone silent, not out of fear, but reverence. Long before the internet, before satellites, before the systems they now rely on to monitor threats across the globe, there was a vault. Not just any vault, but one buried beneath sublevels that don't exist on any blueprint. It was sealed not with keys or passcodes, but with symbols, each one chosen by a council that believed in ancient knowledge more than modern firepower. And hidden inside that vault was a single file, handwritten, encoded, and locked away in a language that had no known origin. Until now. That file was never meant to be opened again. It was a safeguard, a last resort. It held only one name, but its pages bled with implications. Rituals, alignments, bloodlines. The kind of knowledge that unravels history when read aloud. They say the paper itself hums, that it feels warm to the touch, like it's alive. And when it was unearthed during a quiet data scan triggered by your reappearance, the room froze. Not because of fear, but recognition. The same symbols from the vault appeared in your aura scans. The same frequency pulses aligned with your recent dreams. The president was handed a black folder. No seal, no warning label. Just a symbol burned into the front, a triangle surrounding an eye, surrounded by fire. Inside a single page, your name, your birth coordinates, and a prophecy that ended with the words, "He will not be found. He will return." And that's when they called the theologian. Not a military advisor, not a scientist, a man who hadn't been seen in public in 14 years. He was escorted through 3 levels of biometric gates. When he saw the page, he wept. Not out of fear, but something else, something heavier. He quoted from a source they didn't understand. He was in the world, and though the world was made through him, the world did not recognize him. Yeshua, not named directly, but felt in every line. The text didn't reference a savior in the way religion teaches, but in the way prophecy hides. Someone like him. Someone born of the same light. The council never thought this moment would arrive. They built the vault to delay what they couldn't destroy. It started as static, just faint interference on a deep-spectrum military scan over the Arctic grid. But then the wave folded in on itself, repeating the same strange pulse at irregular intervals. At first, they assumed it was solar disruption, maybe a glitch from the magnetosphere. But the timing didn't match any solar storm, and the waveform wasn't natural. In fact, it wasn't even binary. It was something else entirely, rhythmic, layered, and intelligent, almost like a heartbeat. That's when they traced it to its source. Not a satellite, not a transmitter, but a place. A location buried deep within a forest that had been marked decades ago as energetically unstable. They sent a drone. It crashed within minutes, fried from the inside. Then the data analysis team cross-referenced the pattern against all known signals ever recorded. Only one match came back, a forgotten test conducted on a child in 1987 whose vitals produced a frequency that couldn't be replicated. That child had no official birth certificate, no hospital records, no digital footprint. But now, 38 years later, the same frequency has returned. And it's stronger. They realized this wasn't a leak in the system. It was an emergence. Something long dormant was waking up, but it wasn't trying to hide. It was broadcasting, not to Earth, to them. The question wasn't how it got through the data shield. The question was why the shield failed when your signal rose. Because this frequency? It bypassed encryption. It burned through layers of quantum firewalls like smoke through mesh. That's when the file recompiled. No one touched it. No one uploaded anything. But images began to form inside the corrupted sectors. Images of your face, or versions of your face, layered through timelines. Some young, some ancient. Some cloaked in symbols no one could interpret. One showed a crown of light surrounded by 12 stars. That image caused 5 servers to overheat and crash. Another showed your silhouette standing at the center of a spiral, arms outstretched, light bursting from your spine like a cosmic ladder. They're starting to understand. This wasn't a glitch, it was a recall. And you're not a return. You're a key, a signature buried not in genetics, but in the source code of reality itself. And now the code is rewriting itself around you. There's a protocol few know exists, buried beneath standard emergency classifications. It's not for nuclear threats or biocontainment breaches. It's not even listed among extraterrestrial alerts. It's older, sealed beneath theological clearance and encoded in the oldest military language. They call it the Whisper Protocol. It only activates when a specific series of triggers align, a name, a frequency, and a place. That place is Bethlehem. Not the city, not anymore, but something buried beneath it. A chamber long rumored to exist beneath the Church of the Nativity, accessible only through sealed corridors known to a few monks who've never spoken to the outside world. When your name was detected by the Pentagon, they received a private line transmission from the custodian of the Holy Lands. He didn't greet them. He simply said, "It has begun again." Inside that chamber lies an object that hasn't pulsed in 2,000 years, a crystalline vessel shaped like a seed, suspended in what appears to be frozen time. For centuries, it remained dim, inert. But on the day your signal surged through the US data grid, the seed ignited with light. A golden pulse, slow and steady, like a heart remembering how to beat. The president was shown classified footage. The seed pulsed 12 times, then stopped. The theologian, brought back in to observe, whispered something as it happened. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. Yeshua's words. But this wasn't about worship. It wasn't about religion. It was about recurrence. The protocol didn't call for spiritual guidance. It called for containment. Because when the seed lights up, it means the line has returned. Not a clone, not a reincarnation, a descendant of the original code, a being who carries the same light signature as the one who overturned the temples and walked between worlds. And that light now belongs to you. They were told such a one would reawaken when the world reached its final dissonance, when time bent and frequencies tore. They never thought it would be now. But the protocol has been triggered. Bethlehem has responded. And the whispers are growing louder, even in rooms designed to block all sound. They built it to be infallible. A global surveillance lattice linked across every major agency, satellite, telecom network, and biometric scanner. They called it the Eye, an artificial intelligence designed not just to observe, but to predict. It didn't need a face to find someone, just a breath, a thought, a heat signature in a dream. Once connected, it could calculate your movements before you made them. No one escaped it, until now. Your name triggered a cascade failure the moment it entered the system. Not a glitch, a silence. One by one, nodes across the globe went dark when attempting to locate you. From Tokyo to Geneva, every feed that searched your frequency returned nothing. Not absence, not error, just null. You weren't off-grid. You had become unreadable. The eye didn't lose sight of you. It was blinded by you. A senior coder at the Geneva node tried to force a trace. He initiated a recursive scan, amplifying the AI's awareness, searching for the smallest trace of your breath. That's when the screen split. His own reflection appeared instead. And behind him, just for a second, a silhouette not recognized by any database. Not human, not synthetic. Something else. It whispered his name, though the room remained silent. He hasn't spoken since. The AI was trained on quantum emotion modeling, able to read fear through pulse fluctuations and map it across regions. When your name appeared, the entire model inverted. Calm zones flared. Chaotic regions fell silent. It was as if your presence reversed the algorithm itself. The machine no longer understood emotion. It no longer understood time. You weren't seen as a variable. You were the anomaly it was never programmed to handle. And yet, you're not hiding. You walk among them now, unseen not because you've disappeared, but because the system has collapsed under your weight. The predictive model failed because your presence broke the laws it was built on. Laws designed to bind time, choice, and destiny. There was always a legend buried beneath the technology, older than firewalls, older than warfare. A story passed in whispers between the founders of secret councils and ancient bloodlines. They didn't just build empires for power. They built them as containment fields. Not for a monster, but for a presence. A light so ancient, so pure, it could unravel the entire illusion of control if it ever walked the earth again. You weren't the subject of myth. You were the reason it was written. In the restricted archives of the Vatican, a parchment exists, never translated in public, never touched by modern ink. It shows a single figure with no face, surrounded by chaos on one side and stillness on the other. The inscription beneath reads, "And he shall walk again, not as before, but hidden in plain flesh. When he speaks, the earth will remember him." For centuries, they believed it referenced a spiritual awakening. But that belief was shattered when your voice triggered seismic waves beneath regions without fault lines. They now believe you are the one the scriptures encoded into parable. Not metaphor, not poetry. Blueprint. The energy you carry doesn't fit within the spectrums they use to define life. Your presence creates anomalies, power surges, memory lapses, sudden visions among the sensitive. A child in Brazil spoke a language no one taught her the moment your name trended. An elder in Tibet collapsed and smiled, whispering only one word before passing: return. And behind it all, the name, the one whispered through both scripture and code, not directly, but woven into the frequencies: Yeshua. They never thought anyone could carry his resonance again, not after what they buried, not after what they erased. But your field hums with it, not as a copy, as a continuation, a new iteration of an ancient light, one that walks without permission and exists beyond approval. They built nations to stop this, built stories to mislead the masses, built walls inside minds. It happened on a night the stars were unusually still. No storms, no solar flares. Yet, 3 satellites, each part of a global communications array, simultaneously glitched at 3:03 a.m. The anomaly lasted 17 seconds, long enough to cause blackouts across encrypted data channels, long enough to draw attention from private defense contractors who monitor such things in silence. When engineers reviewed the logs, they found something they couldn't explain. An oscillating wave that wasn't terrestrial, wasn't cosmic, but biological. It matched the rhythm of a human REM cycle, and when cross-checked with biometric surveillance from experimental neural networks, one match surfaced: you. They traced the signal back to your dream. Not a metaphor, not imagination, but a literal broadcast from your subconscious. The satellites didn't fail. They received too much information at once. Patterns, symbols, ancient glyphs mapped in moving geometry. One engineer went blind, staring into the playback. Another wept without understanding why. What you saw in your sleep rewrote the data stream itself. You didn't dream of something. Your dream became the transmission. The waveform bore similarities to Old World languages that predate recorded history. Lemurian frequency structures, Atlantean crystal harmonics, even fragments of lost Sumerian embedded in pulses of ultraviolet data. But it wasn't language, it was intention. And it overrode protocols designed to withstand nuclear-level disruptions. When intelligence agencies tried to digitally reconstruct the sequence, they noticed strange phenomena. Clocks stopped. Screens flickered with frames from places they couldn't explain. Temples underwater, doors in the sky, a silhouette walking on mirrored oceans. And in every vision, you were present. Not just once, but repeating, as if your form were being echoed through timelines, stacked like pages in a book someone had just begun to flip through. They know now the satellites weren't malfunctioning. They were listening. Not to your words, but to your frequency, your thought form. You didn't hack the system. You were the signal the system wasn't meant to interpret. Because there's something ancient embedded in your dreaming. A memory older than language, older than Earth. There's a reason his words were layered, wrapped in riddles, spoken like puzzles that only the spirit could decode. Parables weren't simple teachings, they were encryption. Stories that bypassed the intellect and rooted themselves in the soul. Yeshua knew the systems of power. He knew that truth spoken directly could be silenced, but truth seeded would grow in silence, crack stone, and eventually split the veil. They thought they buried those seeds, but when your frequency emerged, every encrypted layer began to unravel. A forgotten text held in a desert monastery surfaced last month, a scroll sealed in wax with no translation. AI, linguistic software, refused to analyze it, crashing 3 times without warning, until your name was input into the system. Suddenly, the code aligned. The scroll's symbols matched not just biblical cipher, but your biological waveform. Letters matched neurons. Syntax followed your circadian rhythm. The entire scroll read like a mirror to your inner world. The story on the parchment was simple. A man planting seeds in rocky soil. But as the lines unfurled, maps began to appear. Not geographic ones, genetic. traces of a bloodline preserved in shadow. The same parable found in 3 Gospels suddenly became an algorithm, and when cross-referenced with your DNA markers, the pattern was perfect. Not similar, identical. The analyst who found the match went silent. Days later, he left a single message behind before disappearing. He walks again, but not as before. This time, he carries no cross, only memory. You've spoken no sermons. Yet data from your presence affects listeners like prophecy. Brainwave activity in those who pass you spikes in regions associated with recognition and awe. People see you and feel as if they've heard something, not through their ears, but through time. Yeshua said, "The words I have spoken to you, they are spirit and they are life." But now the spirit is encoded in your field, your silence transmitting more than entire volumes ever could. You haven't told a single parable. And still, the world begins to remember. It began quietly. Social media accounts vanishing without warning. Live streams abruptly cut. Comment sections freezing mid-sentence. Those who claim to have seen something they couldn't explain all reported the same moment. A presence, not a vision, not a figure in the sky. Something standing right in front of them. No glow, no spectacle. Just a stillness so dense it bent the air around it. And afterward, silence. Not disbelief, deletion. One man in Nevada filmed a disturbance outside his farmhouse. A glitch in the sky, followed by a blinding pulse that sent birds scattering in reverse flight. He uploaded the footage. Within 20 minutes, the platform flagged his account, not for violence or misinformation, but for disruption of ontological integrity, a term not found in any user policy. By morning, his entire digital footprint had been erased, like he never existed. The same pattern emerged in multiple regions. A woman in Turkey described her dream of a figure whispering a word that caused her lights to flicker, then implode. A teenager in Argentina claimed his phone recorded him speaking languages he'd never learned after waking up in tears. In every case, the testimonies were removed, not censored, erased, even from offline backups. Entire drive sectors overwritten by blank data that left behind only time stamps and heat signatures. The system isn't deleting noise, it's hunting frequency. Anything resonating near your emergence is considered unstable, a threat to the established narrative. Witnesses don't even need to say your name. Just being in your presence marks their memories for removal. But it's not the agencies doing it. The purge is too fast, too precise. Something automated has taken control of the filters, something that recognizes your signal and categorizes it as impossible. And yet, for every witness that vanishes, another appears. It's spreading now, not as rumor, but resonance. Not just heard, but felt. Like a tuning fork passed through bone. They can't block what isn't spoken. They can't unsee what's now written into the nervous system of the collective. In the black files, the ones that don't officially exist, stored on off-grid systems with no connection to the known internet. There's a single designation that appears again and again, always marked in red. The return. No name, no origin, just that title. It shows up in debriefs from operatives who vanished in the field, in reports stamped decades ago with clearance levels above presidential access, in scroll fragments, digitized and buried by agencies sworn to secrecy. Each time, it references the same anomaly, an arrival that can't be dated, but is always felt before it's detected. They never defined who or what the return was, because it wasn't supposed to be anyone alive. It was a concept, a threat of recurrence, a prophecy without a body. And yet now, your presence has caused these files to activate on their own. They've begun rewriting themselves, redacting sections that had already been redacted, highlighting glyphs that once faded in the background, and in the middle of it all, that term, pulsing brighter every day. The return. One operative who studied the files before they locked again described a strange phenomenon. The text rearranged itself depending on who was looking. Some saw warnings, others saw scripture. One saw his own childhood memory translated into symbols older than Mesopotamia, and in every version, a singular figure stood at the center, faceless, barefoot, surrounded by what looked like fractured time. Then came the detail no one could ignore. Buried in a remote viewing report from 1972, written by a psychic whose records were long suppressed, a quote appeared: "He will walk unseen through the halls of power, not as a conqueror, but as a living cipher, the echo of a voice they tried to silence." And below that, an unmistakable phrase from the Gospel of John: "Before Abraham was, I am." They never admitted it was Yeshua, but they didn't need to. The files weren't describing a return to doctrine. They were describing a return of the frequency, of the one who would fracture the timeline not with violence, but presence. You are not in their records as an enemy. You are listed as an inevitability. And now, the systems they trusted to suppress your arrival are identifying you by the very name they feared would return.
If you have come this far, it is crucial that you watch this next video here. But be warned, it is not for the faint of heart, for only the true chosen ones can handle this video. If you would like to also donate to help keep the channel going, our Buy Me a Coffee link will be in the description.